This is Legends of '84, the story of BYU's remarkable national championship football team, told by the men who changed the world of college football and were forever transformed by that unforgettable season.
We knew we were going to be good. How good? Nobody knows.
I just never thought we'd lose. And each game that we won, we got more and more confident.
But once we played next to each other, we protected one another.
If you're not willing to prepare, then you're not going to be ready to win.
We are a peculiar people. We need to embrace that.
Brigham Young University has won the Holiday Bowl 24-17, and the Cougars are the only undefeated team in the nation. And I think they'll be number one.
Once again, BYU throwing the ball.
Irv, don't you love Brigham Young? They don't come out to establish a running game, get things going. They come right out, they shoot, they throw the football. Is what they do best.
Running is for cowards. That's what they say in pro.
Grew up in Honolulu, ended up in Salt Lake City. Absolutely enjoyed my experience there. Met my wife, had some children, did the whole bit. It was a great experience for me. Hey, this is Norm Chow. High school football in Hawaii has always been huge because there's only one university there. And at the time, it wasn't a very solid place to play football at the university level anyway. So most of the guys, and still till today, most of the guys leave. They want an experience with the programs on the mainland, if you will. But it was huge. I can remember playing championship football games in front of 35,000 people. Everybody has been influenced by somebody, and for the most part, it's your coaches. I had a high school coach that was hard as nails on us. He is an ex-professional player, and until today, I've always admired what the lessons that he taught. I went out for high school football as a ninth grader, and I remember driving home with my dad after practice and telling him how much I disliked playing football, how hard it was. And I wasn't sure about this coach. His name was Charlie Arnay, played with the Detroit Lions, played at USC. And my dad said something I'll never forget. He said, son, did it ever occur to you that all he's trying to do is to get you better? And from that day on, until the day he passed, I've admired him, and I've never forgotten the lessons that I've learned from him. It was because of people like that I think a lot of guys get into coaching.
Their team is up by 48 points and about to win their 8th in a row. And even if someone doesn't stumble, you got to take a look at BYU and say this is the ball club that's for real.
I just took a chance, wrote Lavelle Edwards, and he remembered us, when he was coaching at BYU. We played at Utah, remembered who we were, and offered us a graduate assistantship. And so we were able to finish graduate school, to be a graduate assistant at BYU to pay the bills, and my wife taught school in Salt Lake, so we were very blessed. 3 years later, there's an opportunity. Lavelle had an opening on his staff and asked us to stay, so it worked out pretty well. We were awfully lucky in our career. Lavelle Edwards, he made it known right from the start, culture before scheme. And Lavelle Edwards epitomized that. He was in charge of a culture. He had very little to do with the scheme. But he'd always say, hey, that's why I hired all of you as assistants. You guys take care of the scheme. He would take care of the culture, making sure the players were going to class, doing what they were supposed to be doing. And I think that's what made him so unique, and that's what allowed him to have the success he did, because he hired some coaches, offensively especially, way before me, Doug Scoville, Ted Tollner, those fellows that set the tone for what BYU was going to do on offense. Lavelle knew when he took that job that unless he did something different, it was going to be the same. They had not been successful prior to him taking it over. And he knew, because he said that often, that he had to do something that would make them have a better chance to win. And he realized throwing the ball at that time would be it. He hired some good football coaches to do so, and the rest is history.
Good. I was going to say, this is a good time for Brigham Young in this game to work on their running game. But the only problem is they're not going to use it. They're not going to use it that much in the game anyway. They're going to throw the ball 90% of the time.
It was Doug Scoville that really set it apart, because I was hired the same year Doug was hired. I was hired as a receiver coach, but Doug was really the quarterbacks and receiver coach. I just sat around in the back of the room and took notes, and Doug did it. And the example I can give you is the minute Doug Scoville got there, everything was in two backs, but back in the day. And so he immediately widened the backs so that they were over the tackles. And that was a precursor to empty. Everybody plays empty now. Oh, wow, gosh, everybody's playing empty. Doug Scholl had empty done 10 years ago. You know, football is very cyclical, if you will. Many people don't understand is Doug and Ted and those fellas, they set the tone for Lavelle and for the pass offense that was in its heyday back then. What happened was Doug was there, implemented the offensive style, then, you know, had a chance to leave. He became the head coach at San Diego State. Lavelle brought Ted Tollner in. Ted was a terrific coach as well, and he integrated all of what he liked with what Doug was doing. And then when Ted left, Ted went to USC, and Ted recommended me to take it over. And that's the break I got. Ted walked in the office, told Lavelle that I deserved the chance, and I had been with both of them and just carried on from there. I'd be lying to you if I told you I figured it out. They were the ones that set it in place. And nowadays, what? Air raid, all this crazy stuff. My gosh. And Mike Leach used to sit in Doug's office and my office and Ted's office trying to learn all that stuff. It's just another name for chucking a football all over the place. Mike and I became dear friends. He wrote a couple books. He always sent me a copy, autographed copy. You talk about unique. Mike was unique. And then obviously, every guy that goes forward adds their own little touches to it. We tried to add ours, and then Mike tried to add his to what was going on.
Now your team champions passing per game in 79, BYU in 80. They set a record, BYU, 81 BYU. Something happened along the way in 82. Long Beach State did that. And then 83 BYU again.
I think the uniqueness of that team was the culture, was the camaraderie that football team had. They were older, right? The offensive line were 4 or 5 of them were returned missionaries. They were all older, 24, 25, 26, and more mature, and they set the tone for that football team. On defense, Kurt Govea, Leon White, those guys. And on offense, Robbie was there, obviously Laquet was there, but the offensive line, Long and some of Craig Garrick, those were the real leaders. Maybe the guys that you don't hear as much of. Those were the guys that set the tone in that locker room. And like I say, I don't know if that can ever be duplicated today. I really don't. Craig Garrick was a very, very unique guy. He played injured. He played hurt, right? Didn't he have a bunch of surgeries and eventually got some addiction problems and all of that kind of stuff. But he was the example. He never missed a practice. He was always there, hobbling along and very vocal what was happening. I think people like that. Louis Wong, if I'm not mistaken, was the left tackle, and we had a pass protection scheme that really demanded that the tackles be good. Those were the guys that really made it all work. If you don't have a good line to protect your quarterback, you've got problems. I don't think the expectation level of the 1984 team was the national championship. I think every year the goal was to win the conference, and that was more of the stated goal. And I think things just fell into place. Teams kept losing, and BYU kept winning, which made it possible. But no, I don't think anyone fathomed that we were going to be in contention for the national championship at that point in time prior to the season. Now, because of that culture that Lavelle developed, BYU was always going to be good. They may not win the championship every year, but they were always going to be a good football team. And I've said this so many times that players coach players better than coaches coach players. And that's what was going on at that time. Craig Garrick's the world would be an example to the youngers. So that cycle just kept going round and round and round. So you knew you were going to be good. Now, how good? Obviously, you had to play the games to figure that out. Mark Bellini, I admired him and respected him from the minute he stepped on. Mark had it all. And not only that, he was humble and upbeat and positive and coachable.
Norm Chow to me is the most unsung hero in the history of BYU football. This is Mark Bellini, wide receiver. I think that he was just a sensational coach. People don't know about Norm Chow. You don't hear much about him, but man, he was an X's and O's guy, and he was just sensational. I loved Coach Chow from day one. He was hard on me. He'd make me work. He would yell. He was tough. If you worked hard, you were going to love Norm Chow, and he was going to love you. If you were a slacker, you were going to have problems with Norm Chow. And I flourished in that atmosphere.
BYU comes out, and they've been doing this for years, throw the football.
As it always is in football, was the defense. Kurt, Leon were the leaders. I think Kerry Whittingham, Kyle's little brother, was the middle linebacker. A bunch of defensive backs that were a combination of some junior college players and Kyle Morrell. Everybody talks about Robbie and the passing game, and rightfully so. But it was the defense. It was the defense that hung in there and just continued to play, because defense wins championships, right? That's the old adage. Defense wins championships. Offense just puts people in the stands, that kind of deal. Now, we were very proficient on offense, but I think it was the defense that really made that situation so special. Now, the weaknesses, I think, as always with BYU, was the depth. You had to keep people healthy, because every time you lose a front line guy, you had someone else ready, but they obviously weren't as able as the starters were.
But Bosco has got great ability and just needs to settle down. I guarantee he's going to get a lot of opportunities to throw the ball. BYU throws 2 out every 3 times.
To realize that the Michigan game was going to mean as much as it did, hey, you might have a shot at this thing. Like Lavelle used to always say, it's different nowadays because we did not have to prove that we were the number 1 team in the country. There was no playoffs. When you start winning, every game it's huge, and you got to be able to weather the opponent's best shots, because they're going to come after you. And I remember that distinctly, making sure the players understood that you know, when they come out, they open with a double reverse pass for a touchdown. Don't worry about it. You have to play 4 quarters. You have to just keep pounding. You have to do what you're supposed to get done and take their best shot, if you will, and then come back and win the game. I think Lavelle did a tremendous job of keeping all the things in perspective, and the players. I remember the players very well. A chance a couple months ago to be a part of a little get-together that they had, and to see them, that they're still close and they're still friends. I think that's the kind of memories you have. The wins and the losses, they all take care of themselves, but the relationships that you make, I think is something that you will always remember.
Bosco back to throw. Under a little pressure. This time he's going to throw it deep. Way downfield, and it's caught for a touchdown to Kelly Smith. You could see suddenly Robbie cranked up, and you knew he was going to throw it deep. And Kelly got a step, and the ball was right there. It really was.
I grew up in a small town, Beaver, Utah. My first playing of any padded football or anything like that was in 9th grade. This is Kelly Smith, running back. In Beaver, we were a small 1A school, not that many kids, 300 in the whole school. Everybody from freshmen up that was boys would play football, and we had a good team. We took state almost every year. My senior year, we went 12-0 and took the 1A state championship. But the reason I got to go to BYU is Doug Scoville came to a football camp that we had in Beaver, and he said, hey, why don't you walk on to BYU? I had a lot of stats, but I was in a small school. I had 36 touchdowns my senior year. I had 2,600 yards rushing. I still hold a lot of state records in high school football. One of them that'll never get broke is the 36 touchdowns, plus I kicked extra points and field goals, but I still didn't get a full ride scholarship anywhere. I decided to walk on BYU mainly because of my religion, and thinking I always wanted to go on a mission. Thought if I went to BYU, if I made it, great. If I didn't make it, it's no big deal. I still could go on a mission. I was actually the first player that year in 1980 when they had the Miracle Bowl. That was my freshman year, same age as Steve Young, Gordon Hudson, all those guys. I was the first one to get a mission call. And I was actually trying to be convinced by Doug Scoville, who was not LDS, to talk me out of going on a mission. He actually grabbed me, put his arm around me, said, listen, if you stay home from your mission, you can be one of my starting receivers next year. And all that did for me was just told me I was good enough to play at BYU. So obviously I had my mission call to enter the MTC on December 18th. Lo and behold, didn't know that the Holiday Bowl for the SMU Miracle Bowl was December 19th. Lavelle and I have talked several times after that thinking, why didn't I just go in a couple days later? Because I was in the MTC the day that they played SMU. So I missed that whole game. I finally got to see the film on Christmas Day, but it was just one of those crappy things thinking, man, I could have been on the sideline, could have been there. Just went in the MTC a couple days later, but obviously because I committed, I went on the 18th.
Bosco fakes a handoff, back to throw, gets the pass off. It's caught to the 35, to the 40. He'll be out of bounds up near the 50-yard line. Kelly Smith coming out of the backfield.
I got a phone call from Lavelle Edwards on my mission. He got permission to call me, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, if you give me a full ride, I'll be home in time to play this fall. If not, I will stay till December." So he actually gave me my full ride scholarship on my mission. And then what's interesting is he says, "Why don't you come at 18 so you can get in shape?" I said, "I'm probably in better shape now on my mission than I was before I left." I got home on Friday. This was in August of that 82 season, and they redshirted me. So I actually earned my full ride, and I tell everybody it's because I went on a mission. And because I went, I was on the national championship and got to be part of that because I always said it's because I served a mission. I still think that serving a mission and converting people to the gospel, the memories I still have with them is even more important than winning a national championship. To see somebody enter the temple and go be sealed for time and all eternity, to me, is probably more important. And being part of the BYU team actually helped promote that, and going on a mission helped promote that kind of stuff. And I've received several letters and things from people that I served and taught, and it was fun. I got to see most of those people in '85 when we went to play Ohio State in the Citrus Bowl.
You have Smith and Hamuli in the backfield. Sweep to the left side. Smith, good blocking. Cuts inside his blockers. He's out to the 42-yard line. Craig Garrett and Hamuli were leading the way blocking-wise, and Benedetti made the tackle.
The biggest thing was Lavelle was like a father figure. The first time he introduced me to the boosters, probably 15,000 people there, he says, "Hey, I want to sing the Beaver fight song." He sings this funny song, and I'd never heard it. And he said, "For I'm a beaver, slap my tail real hard, chew the bark and build a dam. A beaver man is what I am." To this day, he doesn't even know where that came from, but he would teach his kids, his grandkids, all that song. And when I went to the funeral, Patty says, "Hey, you better be at the funeral. That song's coming out." And one of the grandkids actually sang that as part of the things that Lavelle would teach them, funny things. And a lot of people used to just think it was the Beaver fight song from Beaver High School, but it wasn't. I'd never heard it. But Lavelle and I probably sang that together 25, 30 times at firesides and different places. My wife, 30 years ago, when she gave birth to our youngest, almost died. And so we were in the ICU for 10 days, and she was in the hospital for 38. But I think it was 4 in the morning on the first day we were there. The nurse come down, and she says, "Hey, there's a guy on the phone." He says he's Lavelle Edwards. He called every single day at about 4 in the morning when she was in the ICU. He was just always concerned about you and your family, always concerned about what's going on with other parts of your life, not just football. And he would 100% of the time get back with you. If you called or left a text, he would never not get back with you. He'd call and say, "Hey, I can't remember if we talked from whatever this last call, did we get everything out what we needed to?" And if it was just that, "Yeah, we talked about this yesterday," he said, "Okay, just making sure." That's the kind of guy he was.
Bosco back, has the time, puts it down, and has his man across the way, and that is Kelly Smith out of the backfield. And that's another first down. Frank Rayner, the linebacker, knocked him out of bounds.
I was playing receiver when I got there as a freshman, and then they moved me to defensive back my sophomore year, and then they came to me in January of 1984 and says, "Hey, we need a couple more running backs because we only have one on scholarship. Can you do that?" Because I was a running back in high school. So I just remember that's when they moved me to running back, was in spring ball. We got to fall, and all of us started, and every one of the skill positions were new. Pretty much the linemen were all had been there, and so we had a good line, but nobody knew anything, expected anything of us. But we knew we had a special team. We knew that we were capable, and when we finally won that first game with Pitt, it just, "Hey, see, we're good. They're ranked third. We can win." And we just, every game, I felt like we'd win every game just because of Robbie and the guys, and everybody worked hard and everybody liked each other. And no matter what it took, we just figured we'd get the job done and win. And luckily it worked out, even though we had a lot of close games. But it was fun because I know President Holland was the president at the time. He'd come into every locker room. He'd come in there before the game. He'd come at half, after. And to this day, he's the same way. He'd say, "Kelly, how you doing? How's Julie?" When I see him or talk to him, he remembers everything. I don't think we realized how good our defense was and how good some of those players were, like a Leon White or those type of players, how good they were. And so we went against them every day in practice, blocking them one-on-one, running routes one-on-one. And to be honest, I didn't probably go against anybody any tougher than those guys when I played in the game. So by practicing against a really good defense and how good they were, and same with them, they weren't going to see an offense as good as we were, and we weren't going to see a defense. And so between the two of us, it made our team that much better.
On third and about 12, Bosco with all the time in the world. Now dumps it out here to Kelly Smith. Smith has got the first down, run out of bounds inside the 25-yard line by Nick Johnson.
During the Holiday Bowl, Michigan was trying to blitz on my side, which is the halfback side. They were yelling at their coach. The coach was yelling at them. They thought they could blitz and tackle Robbie before he got rid of the ball. That halfback option play, we called it 69 halfback option. If they were in zone, I'd go out 7 yards, I'd turn around, inside or out, and Robbie would just throw it to me. If he jumped me from the outside, I'd turn inside. If he jumped me on the inside, I'd turn outside. And if they blitzed, I would run a hot arrow. But they were coming so fast that we actually adjusted on the side. And I said, I'm just going to turn around. You just throw it to me, and then I'll get what I can get. So out of 10 catches, I think 9 of them were the halfback option. They would blitz. Robbie would just throw it to me. I'd catch it and get 8 or 9, 10 yards. They'd do it again. And then they were yelling at their coaches. What do you want me to do? You told me to blitz. They wouldn't be able to stop it. They never adjusted it till late in the game. So the last play of the game, they started double teaming me. We actually called the halfback option, knowing they were going to double team me. And so tight end would be wide open right behind me because he ran right behind me. Well, they tackled him. So when Robbie scrambled, our scramble rule was if I'm outside, I just broke to the end zone and everybody else would flush across the field. And luckily, he saw me breaking down the sideline and threw it to me. So that play was actually not even a designed play for me to run like out and up. I was just out there because the play broke down because of what happened. Then he threw me the ball, which every game, 1 or 2 plays, he'd throw it to me from breakdown. It was cool because I think I had 4 or 5 rushes is all, and I scored the first touchdown rushing, but we didn't run it a lot because of their defense. Hamuli ran it a little bit more, but we passed it all because they were blitzing every single time on that weak side. We just outsmarted them and threw it quicker, and I just get us 8 or 10 yards because there's nobody there to pick me up. So we just kept doing it, and Robbie didn't even call the play and say, okay, Kelly, here we go. It was awesome. It was the best ever because those guys were tough too. And they talked trash and they were complaining. And Bo Schembler would never shut up on the sideline. It was yelling at the refs that we were holding every time. They're yelling at everything we were doing. It was just a fun game. And to know that we were undefeated and if we could win, we'd be 13-0. And we didn't think we'd even win the national championship, even if we were undefeated, because we had to have help. And we just knew that most people probably weren't going to vote us in because of BYU.
BYU up 7-0. Game from Fort Collins. Bright, sunshiny afternoon. Here's a sweep. Kelly Smith wide to the left side. He's inside the 40, down to the 30-yard line. He's down to the 20, down to the 10. Gets a good block. He may go in for the TD. He does. Kelly Smith on a sweep, power sweep to the left side. I think Bellini threw the one block.
Well, I think so, too. There were about 5 guys out there. They closed down the outside.
I think of the memories, the families, the people I got to know, how I stayed friends with a lot of them. To me, that meant more than winning a national championship. To be friends with Lavelle and his family, and Patty and his kids. It seems like yesterday for me. 40 years has went by so fast, but to see my friends and their kids, and some of the kids have played and whatever. But I don't know if BYU ever won a national championship, so it's a big deal. It's a big deal then, it's a big deal now. But I think it means more now than it does back then because we didn't realize the importance of what we did. If it wasn't for me being a member of the church and being active, I would have never went to BYU, and I never went on a mission. I would have never got my scholarship and done all that. So I owe everything to him. Everything about my life has been because of my Heavenly Father and because of being an active member and staying active and trying to do the things that he's blessed me with. The word of wisdom was easy for me because I always felt that was going to make it easy for me to be a better athlete. I just felt that was important in my life. I made sure my kids realized that this is things you don't do or you do, and always stay active in the church and you'll always be happy, keep the commandments that you've been taught. If I wouldn't have went on a mission, I would have missed the national championship years. I believe Heavenly Father put me where I was supposed to be.
Coming up next episode.
One of the things that made that 1984 team special was because we knew that we could have fun together. We found out that Louis Wong was afraid of snakes. He never should have told us that.
Thank you for listening to Legends of 84. This podcast series was produced by Eric Michael Robertson and Scott Christofferson with Bree Ray Alpew as associate producer. Music by Stuart Maxfield and Eric Michael Robertson. Legends of 84 is a production of BYU Radio.